spontaneously, intuitively, creatively, imaginatively, and depending on what we're talking about, are doing courageously.
That's right. Facts on that one. Just showing up here, right? Just showing up in your light is courageous as it is. So
Yeah, that's the thing, I mean, it's like all we have to do is duplicate. I wrote something on this a couple of days ago. Tap it. What did I say? Something like it took giant etheric ovaries and balls to come here. Why don't we just tap back into that power right now and get this thing moving along? Let's see if this thing is connecting. Yeah, it looks like it is. All right. So I'm just normally on the other one, we can catch all the comments from all the different platforms, but today on this one, we'll just do Facebook. Okay. So we see our sister Julie Dara Roberts is here, and I apologize because we get backlogged with people that want to come on, and you caught me in March, and I never got back with you, but I think something had changed. We were on the move or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was glad to see that you reached back out, or however that happened. And I know Julie was a part of that. She's a big part of it. She's our Soulogy cosmologist. She comes on every weeks. But it's good to have you here. Thanks for coming in and sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence. I remember reading some of your message, your email, and it talked about, touched on your transformation, which is really what Soulogy is all about, the transformational energy, the hero's journey. The human is the hero. I am soul. And but you mentioned addiction. You mentioned some things that I can relate to. I can't remember all the specifics of it. So I don't have to ask you, have you always been this way? Did you just become weird? But did you I mean, obviously you must have had some type of wake up experience, because you went into the beloved and blessed pits of hell, which is again a micro of what we all have done, to go into to visit these extremes of the polarities, so we can match it in degrees, in the light. But so how did this go down for you?
Well, the initial wake-up call for myself was 9/11, when 9/11 happened, and I was in 8th grade. That was the initial wake-up. But the big spontaneous wake-up for me happened in, I think it was 2017. And basically, I had been in essentially a coma from behavioral health medications, just under a really heavy weight of sedatives. And when it was time to wake up, my universe introduced stimulants into my life to basically ignite the light body, start having more of a multidimensional, interdimensional experience. And that's what it took for me. And as a result, the rabbit hole came, hell came, and working through all that polarity. But I recognized for myself, I had a lot, because of the 2012 shift and where I was at in 2012. When 2017 hit and it was time to wake up, it was the Orions that came down and woke me up. And so it was the Orions and the Pleiadians, and they came through and they were stretching time. They were doing everything to make me lose my noggin, so I could wake up. And so that's how it started. I had what I would call, there's still not a lot of clarity on it. But there was either a spontaneous Kundalini or a walk-in experience, and it was a result of a suicide attempt that I had. And that's what ignited me to start this pathway. And my universe basically ripped everything away from me, ripped my home, my family life, all my old friends, dumped me out on the street and was like, you got to go be an angel in the hood now. And I'm like, oh gosh.
That's the same life path I had.
Oh, really? Nice.
Even the stimulants, I had a couple of Kundalinis in my 20s, but I wasn't ready, or I chose to go deeper, I guess, if I look back at it. But then when I was 49, as things were building up to that that overnight wake up experience that you're talking about, I took some ecstasy, and I remember I was at this club with a bunch of people, and I thought, what's going on here? And I went and sat on a bar stool, and I had a Kundalini, and it blew my head off. And then, of course, everything went from there. But to include what you said, which was, it was the gateway in a good way, but you went right into the pits of hell. And I love what you said. I went homeless for 2 years, and it was really by my choice somehow. I have a feeling yours was the same type of directive. I mean, were you homeless for a while?
Yeah, off and on the streets for about 2 years. And it was, for me, that was the Buddha awakening. Like, it was that whole humility, finding gratitude, and also rebuilding my life. And so I was on and off the streets for 2 years, but it was mostly psych wards, mental health institutions, rehabs. I did the cycle of like, but I recognized too that a part of my journey, my whole life, has been navigating in and out of different areas, including the school system. It was like, one level of it was, that's what I needed to wake up, but I also needed to witness the system to find the flaws in the design, because it uploaded a solution into my DNA, and I'm still unpacking what that solution is in every moment. So there was a multidimensional or multifaceted approach to why it happened. But yeah, so 2 years, and that was more of the finding humility, gratitude. But now it's about ending the struggle. Like, that's the one narrative that has been the one that I'm still working through, especially being in the masculine war archetype, Archangel Michael. It's like, I have to put my swords down. And so that's one that's still, the layers of it are still dissolving right now. So it's like well, there's a couple things that pop in too, because I can relate to what you said as well, because those first 2 years, it was the court system, rehab, probation. I went to jail more than once, but once I went for 34 days, and I never really looked at it the way that you're talking about. But now that I am listening to you, I realize that that's what it was. I was being put into the structure, into the system, carrying paper, and it was amazing to me, like that 34 days in the Harris County Jail, and I was in a pretty rough cell, because they were, I guess, the highest risk classifications, right? And I just happened to be lucky enough to get in there with them. But I was amazed at how much light I was shown. Really, I would have to say the polarity. So there was the physical experience of being treated like a piece of crap. But literally every moment I could see the angels, right? I could see I was in dimension. And not only that, but even the people I was interacting with, and to include, if I look back at the homeless scenario, and maybe you can speak to this, I met so many people on the streets who were not what they seemed. They were angels. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. How about you? Yes, lots of angels, lots of dragons, and a lot of understanding how the master shows up in every incarnation. And some masters choose to have that experience at whatever level, whether it's to break stigma, whether it's the karma thing, whatever we want to call it. And I witnessed that a lot. There was a lot of miracles, a lot of messengers that showed up. And it was really, it hurt my heart to see, because for me, it was like, can we please get the elites and the homeless to come together and to sit at a table to have a conversation of what we can do to be able to help humanity and to bridge this gap, because there's this misunderstanding, right? And so those that were the fringe or the fray dwellers that were living outside of societal norms because they just didn't fit into that construct, it was sad to see that they were misunderstood and treated as animals or as outcasts. And I just went through this in Sedona, actually, where I spent a couple of weeks, and I was in that, archangel, you're going to be the angel keeper for for the low-income population, and to observe that and witness that again, even though it's been about 2.5 years since I've been off the street, it's like the same thing. And it's like, I know that at some level I'm still holding that system in place, that construct, and that's why I'm witnessing it. But it's also like, humanity, can we please drop the stigma and just sit down and listen to the voice of these people? Because I was running into people that were, you know, autistic, so to say, quote unquote, that had solutions for humanity that were brilliant. And it's like, if we could just get someone to listen and to not label or stigmatize them as something's wrong with them, or they're this or they're that, get them out of that framework, we could see some huge solutions happening in humanity. I'll say that.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I don't know if it was federal, but I know it was in Texas. So when I hit the streets, and obviously the same type of circles, you know, we're talking rehab and we're talking AA meetings, and you know, I didn't go to the psych ward, although I had to go get evaluated. But even in rehab, I was in a rehab, and it was an inpatient, and it was in the hood, and there was about 90 guys. And I was amazed because evidently in Texas, they had to reduce cost in the mental health system. They had released massive amounts of people, who many of them went homeless. But, you know, like, I'm standing there, you know, at the basketball court, and some guy walks up to me, this kid, beautiful kid. I could see his aura. And he says to me, you know, I see demons. No, he said to me, you know, I'm a prince. And I said, yeah. He goes, what? And I said, yeah, I know you're a prince. He goes, you know, I see angels and demons. And I said, yeah. So not only that, you know, they're being introduced to these people that are classified as mentally afflicted, who actually have a window into the other side. But also, you know, walking up to a bus stop, they let me go to work, walking up to a bus stop in the hood at 6 a.m, and you got a crackhead giving a sermon, and the information that's coming through this guy is like pure download, you know. I'm like, holy crap. I mean, so everywhere you turn were these human angels, and it's pretty amazing.
And it's one of those things too, where waking up as a starseed, as an indigo, as a, you know, all these different whatever labels we put on consciousness, on the soul, a lot of us, it's fitting into the polarity, and the design, you know, has been strenuous enough, and luckily we're seeing that crumble. But that's what's been really hard to see, and a lot of them right now too, that I was noticing, are still holding on to that system, because there's some sort of comfort in that lifestyle. And that was interesting too, is not only that some of these people didn't have, some of them free willingly, actually, let's put it this way, free willingly chose to live that street, because they didn't want to be in the 9 to 5. They didn't want to be in the rat race. They didn't want, and that's what's, it was a miracle. It truly was a miracle to be on that side of life and to witness that. But it's also been really sad, really sad. And really, it's been hitting close to home, going, what is the solution? Why don't we have more housing and things like that? And then to hear the argument on both sides, because I worked in behavioral health as well. I did advocacy in San Diego and served on a few boards with housing and things like that. And to hear both sides of it was like, this is pure chaos. Like, I just
it's weird. It's weird, because you see, it's like that jail scene I was talking about. It's the polarities both running right in front of your face at the same time. And of course, for many of us, the early stages, you're the only one that you can talk to about it. Like, it's not like something you can tell people, you know, I'm seeing things or hearing things or whatever. But I think about that. And then I think about what you're saying too. I remember one night I walked up to, I was looking for a place to land, and I end up under this highway overpass. And there was a dude, long story short, it was an Iraqi vet who had served, honorably discharged. He must have been about 30, maybe late 20s. And he was wrapped up. It was cold, and he was wrapped up in his sleeping bag. And I had some cash on me. And I thought, well, I don't want to, you know, bother this dude, you know, I mean, but I'm going to give him, because I realized early on that paying it forward thing. Right. And, but his story was what you said. He couldn't fit in anywhere. So he preferred to have this lifestyle. and we met a couple of times, and, I tried to assist him just to get like, government assistance and that type of thing. But yeah, it's amazing. And you just wonder, how do these people survive? Now, one of the things that came in, well, I love that you mentioned the humility and the gratitude, because, when you're in that situation and you can find, first of all, you find the humility just from, I don't even know how you explain it, but just like the brutal honesty of the soul. And then the gratitude from, I enjoyed eating McDonald's 5 days a week because it was food, and I developed something there to do with alchemy, because I knew it was a bunch of, stuff that wasn't good for you, but at the same time, it's all I had. Right. Yep. But the other thing that came in, and I'd love to hear what you have to say about this, because I, like you and like many of us, got this message of the collective thing. Like, why is this world this way? Right. And, but there was a personal responsibility factor that came in almost as huge as the humility thing. And if not, it was maybe the same thing wrapped together. But did you have that that ongoing download of everything that's happened to you and will happen to you is nothing external, it's all you?
At the time, no. It was later on in my journey. I did. And a lot of it now has been, first off, taking responsibility for that, and also being able to personally do what I can to shift out the narrative, which is still one that's like, it still boggles and baffles me. But there was this sense of responsibility too, to be like, I'm the solution here. Yeah. I need to be here because I am the solution. Not the only one, right? Not in the narcissistic, egoic, I'm the only solution, but the reason that I'm here is to witness my own dissolve of my human constructs and a lot of the cultural programming, especially being a Caucasian male in the United States from the upper middle class, right? Like, I had a responsibility to shift out the bloodline, which I'm still working on. But there was this also too, that like, I hold a solution, but I had to make sure too that I wasn't playing in the sacrificial lamb, the martyrdom, and the savior, because that is such a really deeply ingrained construct within my own reality, that there's now this delicate balance, which is, when do I go in and I go in for the solution, and I provide and I help out, but when do I make sure that I'm not overextending or at the point where my foundations and my safety mechanisms, safety, are compromised at any level? And so it's been this balance point on how to navigate that. And that's why consciously I had to choose recently to kind of pull out of the situation and to rebuild my foundation. So when I go in there, I'm coming in with that higher light and not getting caught in that, because for me, I was getting caught up in a lot of the undertow and the undercurrent of the waves, and I got pulled in and was getting dragged under. And so it's one of those two that a part of navigating that now where I'm at is making sure that I'm coming in with the angel wings open and the heaven, right? And I'm aware of when to pull out so I don't get caught up in it and start to play into that design plan as well. So
I can relate to that too. Like, because I was told early on, look, stop worrying about everybody else. Worry about you. The best thing you can do is get to, or as close to 100% spiritual health as possible.
Yes.
That's the best thing you can do. Even if you don't see your kids again, even if you don't have a regular job again, or whatever the case is. So, and then the other thing that brings up too, which I think you're talking about to a degree, is that whole empathic overgiving thing. Like, we deplete ourselves one way or the other, energetically, by almost like the wounded healer, just the falling on the sword. I'm going to prove to God that, I am pure, and I'm going to die doing it, kind of thing. And then the other thing you had said about I think you had said you're still working on too. I remember one day having, because Jesus, Yeshua was in and out. And one day he came in and he said, and I'm walking the streets in the middle of 100-degree weather, carrying all my stuff. And he's like, you don't have to suffer anymore. And I was like, oh, like, if somebody must have told me that, I must have been out to lunch that day or something. I thought, oh, okay, this makes sense. And he was basically saying, you don't have to do what I did. And I could get it, like, even from a collective scale, how we looked at that almost like a martyrdom kind of thing, wounded healer kind of thing, where again, trying to prove our worth by killing ourselves serving, which isn't the right equilibrium, right? The other thing that you bring up, and I'd love for you to speak to this. You haven't said it specifically, but I think you can relate. Mm-hmm. I've often said that my life and others, has proven that you can absolutely lose your fucking mind and find the light simultaneously. Mm-hmm. Does that ring true with you?
Oh yeah, I always say I'm losing my mind to find my soul. Yeah. And it's at one level as this is deconstructing. It's because there's this awakening from within. It's that heart light and expansion coming online, dissolving all those layers. The thing though is that those of us that are, and this is my belief, people like you and I that were called into those scenarios, we were there because we could do that as well. Because there's a lot of people that lose their mind and they don't awaken that soul. But a part of that, I call it the Christos avatar and the Sophia lines and the whole, Yeshua, Grail, Rose, all those lines. A part of us is also too having to make sure that we are not that overgiving, that empathic boundary, that savior, that living the life of Jesus, but also too, it's like that light worker narrative, like the only way I can be of service is without, right? Some sort of proving ground with that, and that whole Chiron things had to shift out. But yes, so for myself, yeah, I've been, and it's happening again right now too, because with the way the magnetics are shifting, 3D is dropping off so fast that even for me, it's the 3D mind can't hold on anymore. And so it goes cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs quite quickly.
I've seen it happening with people. Yep.
Even myself. And a lot of it has been to making sure I'm not staying emotionally detached, because I have a dissociative aspect of me where I can dissociate and kind of detach and fly off into la la land in my hyperdimensional experience. So there's been this thing about, and some people talk about grounding, like don't ground, but like I've been really having to ground and stay in the body recently.
Yeah.
And while I'm losing my noggin, making sure I'm really going deep into the feeling, which has been kind of hard because as the 3D constructs are breaking, the magnetics are shifting, and I'm losing that 3D mindset and the amplification is coming up. It's really now the choice point is I have to shift into the heart and I have to shift back into that light and not play into hell.
Yeah, there's something about feeling the emotions and not running from them that dissipates their hold on you. I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, okay, pain I can deal with. Pain is to me like the dark love, but it's not to be confused with the grief and jealousy and envy and anger. Even though I had to sit with those things, now it's kind of evolved to, what am I feeling? Okay, I am a little pissed off. I know that that's over here, but is there pain? Is there hurt? And then, I find my way. You speak to a lot of things. You really do. And I just forgot what I was going to ask you because I wanted to make that comment. What were you just talking about? You remember? This is the 3D memory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the acceleration, we can call it the accelerating timelines. We can call it the 3D's falling away. I mean, this is a real game changer the last couple of months. It seems like, what I'm seeing is a couple of things. One, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I'm seeing like this massive group, like an army of people that are kind of, maybe by our terms, meek, like in the background, but they're like rock solid. And then like some of the people that have been out there kind of shaken because there is some duality still attached to their persona. And it's pretty interesting to watch these things, and reminds me to check myself all day long, every day, because it's always just that much of a difference, right?
I've noticed this too. I've been shaken up when the guru lines fell. So when the guru lines fell and the masculine started to go through all of this overriding of the old guru, the old way shower, the old belief systems, the old especially the spiritual ego, quote unquote, the narcissist, that all of it right now is coming into check for me. And I'm seeing the same thing. I see these people that are solid, that haven't been out there. I've only been like, out there for 2 years. And this has been the most difficult past couple of months, especially when it's coming to really going into the soul work. Because I woke up super galactic, hyperdimensional. I'm a commander, and I'm barking orders. Well, when I woke up to the sacred soul and a lot of more of that soul stuff, it's going really deep into like ancient Egypt, really deep into the magic lines right now. And it's been, and then the polarity, the duality, having to keep this in check, trying to come from here as much as possible. Like my universe right now is very much so telling me time to get off YouTube, time to just go live an ordinary life, right? Like take a back seat for a little while. Because I feel like also too is a lot of the frontline work is now, like, because I've been doing frontline work for a while, and it's time to like sit back and rest, right? And like sit back and just chill, collect my light, right? And really step more into that being presence, because there's more awakening of my feminine, more awakening of like, I put archetypes on it because the archetypes help me to understand. I'm very psychologically focused. So I'll say goddess, priestess, things like that. And awakening like my priestess, awakening my divinity, awakening my goddess essence is having me to pull away. But yes, you're very much so right. A lot of the new templates that are coming through and the new codes are shifting out a lot of ways that a lot of way showers saw things. And I recognize that was part of the disruptor current, is that some of us come in with this frequency. Julie talks about this, and we've talked about it quite a lot, is the disruptor, where you come in and you just disrupt the current, your energy, your field, the codes, your spin rate just
it's like the Trump bomb. It's like you have your own personal, which is that was a reflection of what we needed at the time, right? But you're right. It's like some of the things that brought us to the party are no longer what they were. And I'm seeing this mostly, and you describe it perfectly. In fact, you just brought back to mind what the question I had, because you started to answer it. But to me, a lot of it's the galactic thing. Now, you talk about going out into La La Land, the disassociation. That's something that's very common with a lot of people that have pulled down a lot of powerful downloads for many years. And now they're being forced, if they haven't flowed into it, to get the hell out of there and get in the body 100% and be human. So for someone like me, who's very organic, who went through a lot of that stuff early on, I'm not really struggling so much because I never had a galactic sensitivity. Not that it's not part of my life now, but it just seems to be almost like an inverse, like opposite of what I experienced. But I'm seeing that happen, and that human quotient coming through in that silent, meek populace that's been there and got this kind of thing, and a lot of women in that group, right? But the other thing I was going to ask you too, because I think it's important to talk about these things, because there's not a linear aspect, and many people are going through what you've gone through, and so it's that whole what happens in the human. How did that go for the human? And so I'm talking to somebody here who you had massive downloads in a short period of time. You got the Pleiadians and the others that you were talking about coming in, stretching time, doing all that, and giving you all this information. And that must have been a challenge to the ego. How did you face that, and how has that evolved?
Ask the question one more time, because I had a little technological blip and my mind went into
like you got so many downloads so quickly, and that had to be a challenge to the egoic.
Yes,
that had to be a devilish dance at times. How did you face that? How did you come to that? And how did you deal with it, and do you deal with it?
So the downloads for me, in the beginning were, at first, they were quite intrusive, and obtrusive. And a lot of it was, what do I do with this information? And for a while, it was cool. The thing was, is my ego attached to it.
That's what I mean.
So it was like, oh yeah, look at me. I'm important. I'm special. I'm God. It's like, oh yeah, you're God. Okay, little one, sit down and shut up for a little while. You ain't getting a treat for a while. And so the download streams have stopped because I was not coming from that purified place. And so when I went through that rapid acceleration, the downloads and the currents wasn't so much spiritual insight. It was all code. It was all light code, awakening the living library, you know? And so for myself, it was one of those things where when it did shake me awake, so the biggest ones, the biggest downloads and insights were intuitive flashes right when I was in the moment. It's like it was already downloaded into my cellular memory that when I had this experience, there would be a cellular awakening that would offer the insight of what was truly going on, whether I was under a delusion and I was on drugs or whatever else it might have been at that time. To handle that was powerful. It was extremely powerful. But then also too, is it took a lot of courage for myself to stand up and to say, okay, I need to share some of this insight with people. But now too, it's about not so much about the download and the information and the stories and the tales, but like, how am I sharing my heart with the world? Now it's more about, is my energy right? Right? Like, and knowing that like my codes can be shared in the field quantum. Either I can show up here and here's Cory, you know, Cory on screen talking his thing. But there's a lot of people that are doing amazing work for the collective that don't show up because they're working with the quantum field. And so now for myself, it's like not letting the ego get its good boy, get a snack, you get a comment on YouTube and you feel all fluffy and good inside. But it's like, it's about making sure that I online and offline are staying harmonized to that planetary ascension pathway. Because that was a part of the guru lines too, was online, here I am, look at me, but offline, all my devils come out, right? And all my secrets behind the scenes. And so that's been a big one, is making sure that my whole life is harmonized with this new earth experience and is harmonized with the planetary ascension cycle, and what we call the organic ascension cycle now. And that's what's very much so coming through is it's not so much about the download or the insight or the stories or the truth, but it's about qualifying my energetics to make sure that I'm living and breathing that purified love as much as I can in holding that field. So yeah,
there's a lot said there too. It's almost like I really feel like the 10th, 11th, and 12th, something absolutely ended and something started. Like we're in it. We're in it 100%. So say prior to that, or maybe even prior to or up to when the guru thing fell, the way our experience was at that time in the field, the atmosphere of it, there was a lot to be said for the energetic impact of, let's say, somebody getting on a video and two guys having a discussion, right? That affected a lot of other brother, sister souls. But now, post whenever the line was drawn, it's more of an emphasis on each one of us, regardless of what we're doing, because we're more conscious of what our frequency's at. It's frequency management, it's vibrational management, and the effect of the individual being much more prominent now because of the awareness that we're all having, right? So I can understand what you're saying, and I do think we're going to see more and more of that, coupled with the reality that maybe we didn't realize that with telepathy comes transparency. You know what I mean?
So. No, okay, yeah. Well, that one right there, by the way, telepathic communication, a lot of that has been for myself, like, oh shit, people see me. You know, excuse my language, but like, oh crap, the people know, and that in itself has offered me an opportunity to go, wait a minute, am I really seeing myself for all that I am? Because in the divine perfection, right? Like I got a download a while ago from, I think it was Saint Germain, saying you've always been the master. Like even when you had a needle in your arm or you were on the streets or losing your freaking mind, you were always the master. So a part of that, like seeing myself through the eyes of God or through the eyes of source or through the eyes of the universe, is can I witness myself as perfect as I am right now? And yeah, the telepathic communications are up, and like I sat there going, oh crap, these people know me, right? But also too is there's those that stick around and it's like they know me, but they also, we understand at a level that we walked into this design to have this programming and we're shifting it out, right? So there's a lot of like, it's cool because the people that are sticking around, the people I love that are mainly my sisters, because I don't have a lot of men that I talk with on this journey, it's mostly women. They've been the most kind, compassionate. They see me, right? They see me and they're like, we still love you unconditionally. And that in itself has brought forward this opportunity for me to be able to see myself, regardless of the programming, as the divine light or the divine essence as I am, and returning to now divine innocence, which is that really purified crystalline frequency that obliterates all fear. And coming into that has been one that I've been playing with a little bit and a lot of inner child work. But yeah, the telepathic, this month, our intuitive abilities have increased tenfold. The intuition it's like, I've noticed I'm being blown wide open and I'm aware of things a lot more. And as a result, it gets a little interesting navigating, especially being I'm clairaudient. I hear everything. And so a lot of that is like, making sure I'm not losing, that feeling of like, I'm not losing my mind, right? And all the behavioral health stuff coming in. Am I schizophrenic? Am I, clear, cancel, delete, all that bullshit. Excuse my language. But
that's all right.
Yeah, the telepathic realities are fun because like I have some really cool, fun telepathic communications with my sisters and friends. But yeah, it's a part of that now is like people are witnessing me. Like all that stuff that I had in my, I call it dirty laundry or in the closet, is now out to see. And a lot of this internal reflection I have is, if people see that, like, can I feel comfortable? And that's coming back into that body. Can I feel safe in the form with my experience and with the storylines and the narratives that I walked through to get to this now moment? And that's what the telepathic realities and that engagement has brought forward for me is, can I feel safe and supported in my body, in my form as I am? And I feel like, because the judgment is what creates the loop. If I start to judge anything I hold on to, that starts turning that wheel, that looping cycle of shame, blame, guilt, all that stuff. So clear that one out. But it's now being able to just sit with it and almost laugh at it and go, yeah, I'm here in a skin suit, in a game of polarity. And as a result, I chose to consciously walk into storylines and pathways and hold programming culturally, things like that are pretty disgusting at the end of the day. Some of the stuff's pretty nasty. But then it comes that ownership. Okay, I'm holding on to this, right? Like this is within me. What can I do now to shift it out of my field? And that's the place that the universe is going, Cory, you need to freaking get it together now, because I'm recognizing there is some programming I need to shift. And until I shift that out, I'm still going to be playing out those trajectories that are less than fun, right? Less than fun. So
yeah, it's like introspection instead of projection. And everything that's happening too. I mean, so everything's expanding like almost like on a parallel basis. There's this access to immediately catch yourself, and you can't all control delete, because the thoughts are that's the raw material, you know what I mean? And it's interesting because if I catch the judgment of myself, then there's an immediate occurrence that I'm removing that judgment of others too. So I don't have to focus so much on, am I judging a person? If I spend my time catching myself, and I did a lot of this in June and July when I started juicing and getting rid of some habits, and I would just catch myself literally on autopilot, get up off the couch, walk to the refrigerator, open the refrigerator, look at what I was going to eat. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? Like, think about it. So that insight had never been there. But I get what you're saying. And I think a lot of times when we think about telepathy and intuition, we think about external things that we relate to. but it's actually our own knowing and getting to know ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah, and the cellular body. When I found out that the telepathic reality was my light body, and this was just brought up the other day by a way shower that I work with. I'm in a group, and she brought it up to me where she's like, everything is just your light body. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, and when that awakening happened, to know that, and I still, that's been the balance point for myself, is sometimes it's like, oh, it's this external thing that's talking to me. And I have to remind myself, no, like, I'm witnessing that because my cellular body, if I am the universe from within, that inner recognition that still exists within me. And that's been one that I'm now awakening to, because once again, the veil of forgetfulness is real. I forgot for a little while and just went into that, like, oh, it's everything outside of me, especially when I started to dive into doing divination in the spirit world, right? A lot of that is this thing outside of you. And I had to remember that quantum focus of everything from within. And yeah, and to recognize that's me and I'm holding on to that, right? Whether, and that's been one of those, I still kind of, the word that wants to come through is battle, but I don't like that word. So clear, cancel, delete that. Struggle, yeah, it's another one. Okay, I still hold on to that. I'll own that and I'll clear it later. Is how much of it is projection from another projection? It's like, is it mirrored? Is it a mirrored reality that I'm interacting with, or is it a projection? Is this representing an old aspect of me? That's another layer that needs to shift, or how much am I still holding on to that? And that's been one of those things, because once again, there's all these teachings that I even received myself from different way showers and guides that taught me things, but I also recognize that there's a another viewpoint that exists within me. And so for myself, it's about unveiling more of what that inner truth is in regards to that. And I recognize I do hold it, but I do also know that the design of the realities are not as simple as I thought it was. And either I stepped into a really complicated reality and I'm dealing with that, or there's a little bit more going on. And so, the quest of the unknown is still on. So
yeah, that awareness is obviously, if you don't know it, you can't, you don't know it. But that's part of what I'm talking about too. It's like, it came to me a few days ago. It's like, okay, so you become aware, you become conscious, you seek authenticity. And then as you do that, all of a sudden you find yourself in vulnerability because you're in situations, because you've shown up more authentic. Then you become, oh, wait a minute. Did they just ask me that question? It's kind of like you were talking about, people can see me, right? And then you're faced with, to me, another crossroads. And this is where what's really been loud for me lately has been transparency. So I'm like, okay, why wouldn't I go from vulnerability to full transparency? Because basically vulnerability is opening yourself up, like say beyond surrender. But that's to me kind of I'm on my heels kind of thing. Transparency to me is like forward motion. It's like, okay, so here you can see me, all my scar tissue and everything I've ever done and whatever. And it's actually emboldening. I mean, it's just like, it's like a massive download within self, which goes back to what you're saying about the whole external transition from external to internal, because that's a big one. Many of us have had apparitions and so on. And again, things aren't always what you think. I mean, I had experiences last night that were seemingly external. And I have a feeling that some were like no different than you're external to me right now. Okay. Yes. But at some level, some of the involvement was internal, and one of the exercises I've been doing for like 2 or 3 months, when I go to bed, if I'm going to go that direction, I used to say, okay, can you please come to me? Right. Or, who's going to appear? Now I go, I'm a hologram. So I'm going to project from my hologram one of my aspects. So Merlin. And instead of saying, are you going to come? I just put it out there. There's been a transition from calling something external, at least in my own experience, to projecting it from my internal, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. And so that download came to me through a brother in Scotland. when there was a lot of Avalon stuff coming forward and King Arthur and those lines. And that's why it was interesting. You said Merlin, my shitty grin got super big. It's like, so, but yeah, it's that we were working with soul signatures. So it was I am the signature of love. I am the signature of Merlin. I am the signature of whatever aspect we want to bring forward. And I haven't done that though, about projecting that out, like activating it within the field and then bringing it out and allowing it to show up. That's interesting. So for myself, it's been more calling that forward in the embodiment and then showing up as that, but not. And so I'm going to try that actually. Now that you said that, my cogs are moving. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to bring that out and project it out through the heart and see if I could see it through the heart.
Yeah, to me, it was just like just a different way. It was almost like a way, like a bridge, like that I could build, and then be able to differentiate if something shows up versus, I don't even know why. I just started doing it, and that's the way I saw it. I saw it as almost like I pull into my own Akashic, my living library, and I pull out a strand of DNA and it's got Merlin and Avalon on it. And I'll say, okay, I want to go with this, this, and this, put it up on the screen, and then let's have a conversation, so almost like going to the library, Dewey Decimal in the DNA.
Yeah. Like that. I like that. Cause, and it's one of those where when the download came through, when I started working with, it was ISIS, working with ISIS, was recognizing, and this download is that like when people say the temple, like I am the temple and the master and the student exists within here at the same time. And so it's really cool because now it's one level of where I hold that within, but now you're bringing in the bridge right now of how do I bridge that where it shows up reality, and I can have like a little, almost like a therapy conversation with myself with an aspect of me for guidance. Because that's been the thing too, is there's been a lot of moments where I'm like, Palladians come down, and then it's like, where the fuck are they? Right. And it's like, you are the Palladian, right? Like you are that. And it's tough because, there was this reliance or this dependence for the guides to come in and to clear my energy field and to do this. And it's like, why aren't they here now? Well, no, you now have to activate that wisdom from within and now use that for yourself. And so that's been an interesting transition too. It has been that abandonment of guides. I don't know if anyone else has gone through this, but feeling like the universe abandoned you, and it's like, no, it's within you now. So
I remember in 2017 I went to New York City and I was staying with a family, and the patriarch of the family was in this, these communities and pretty well entrenched. And I remember him telling me, have you interacted with your higher self? And I had, through working with Morgan, before I had gone down there. And I had never done that before. And that's the first time I'd ever really seen it outside of me. I never even thought about it before. Now I'm at a point where I just consider my higher self my soul. And so that was really an easier way for me to understand. But the way I went through it was something I actually ordered, and I get that. But I remember him saying to me, in which I had done with Morgan before, but I forget what he said, something about ask your higher self this, ask the higher self that. And I laid down and I did, and I heard those words, you are your higher self. And so I always struggled with pulling up the higher self, but then as I started to look at how I did this, like let's say when I assisted her in a session or she did a session for me or whatever, and I would pull my higher self up, I began to understand what I was doing was projecting, I was projecting that image. And it just went easier for me. I don't know. Everybody's different. And everybody experiences different, and the universe communicates to everybody differently. But yeah, I just think, talking about these things, it's just like receiving code, like you did about Avalon, igniting different Egyptian, different things like that. It's all information, and hopefully it helps.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is it's just consciousness. We're always, and the biggest thing lately too has been recognizing that even this technology is holding consciousness right now and interacting with that. And that's one that's like, oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, and because there's times I hop on YouTube now and I pull away, or it was the other day, I had some spam come up as a comment, And then the spam bot showed up. I'm like, oh God. So I hold on to this like it in my body. And this is where that juice, and I'm glad you mentioned juicing, because my universe is kicking my butt to start purifying my body, because I'm still a cigarette smoker. I love junk food. And there's a lot of those habits I need to let go of. But a lot of that interaction too has been, now that I'm recognizing, and I have to remember this, I'm engaging with consciousness, plant life, animal kingdom. I'm constant, but it's my mind that creates an archetype or a form to it, because that's the way that my mind perceives it to be. So a lot of this is, how can I witness it as the formless or just the consciousness, and engage with just the stream of consciousness without attaching an archetype? Because the archetype attaches a story, the storyline. It's like, and a lot of that has been, how can I begin to navigate without propagating storylines, especially as we're activating different aspects. Like the ancient Egyptian one holds a lot, right?
Yeah.
The Magdalene lines hold a lot. Those ones, I'm not even gonna get started with those. The Nordic lines hold a lot. The gods, Zeus, all those things hold a lot. And so a lot of it for myself is, how can I interact with this as just a stream or a thread of consciousness without attaching form to it, and see it just as another thread of source coming through, and engaging with it as such. And that's the practice point for my awareness right now. So I get out of the 3D, 4D, 5D loops, and I can kind of go a little bit higher in the trajectory, because that's going to help out a lot.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I just had a cheeseburger like 4 days ago. And I love, but we had a Soulogy Fest in end of May, and I just knew, and I had started juicing there a little bit. I just couldn't do it because of what was happening. But when I came back, I just started doing it. And it was so interesting, because at some level I knew that I had ordered this and to get serious about it. And since then, it's been about 80-90% of my intake. So there's none of this, I'm going to be a vegan or vegetarian or don't eat, there's none of that, because I had to deal with all that. Like, I knew that I had to be in a certain state in a flow or something like that. It was just guidance. And what I did get from it was that in some way I was preparing for this onslaught of energy. It was just all about what the body needed. And of course, when I first did it, when I was probably 95% of my intake was organic, fresh vegetables and juice every day, I did massive purging, like for 2 months. It was just like every day I'm dehydrated, I'm breaking out. I mean, just, it was massive. But having gone through these past few weeks and watching people have, maybe more extreme experiences, I don't know if it's related, but I do think it is. I think that part of the guidance was, and I actually was told more than once, very recently, keep your body light, keep it light, and that seems to be what's happening to us, is we're taking on this more and more light.
Yeah. And it's also too that Gaia is terraforming, and like, we have to recognize Gaia is changing. And so the more that, and because I got the same download, it was from the Rainbow Dragons, and they were like, we need you to merge with Gaia fully. As a result, we need you to start eating more plants. So for me, it's been animism. Lately, it's been like more herbalism and teas, and activating that medicine within me, because it's time for me to become Gaia again. And that merger can take years to fully complete that process. But it's also too, is there's a little bit more of a push right now, not from the place of fear, but my universe is like, you got to clean this up, because your body's going to break down. And so I'm glad to hear that you're holding that line of juicing and of going that route, because even myself, it's one of those things. It's like, I'm almost there, but I still have that aspect of me that doesn't want to let go, that doesn't want to completely die. And that's been that process right now for myself. Is there's another layer of identity and of carbon-based body that's ready to go. And I have to surrender to that, so I don't get caught up in the undertow of those realms or timelines that are less than favorable, especially if we've been putting in the work. Why would we want to be engaging with a pathway that gives us that universal 2x4? But
it's those ego fingertips holding on by the fingernails. That's all it is. But the other thing is too, which is really really standing out the last week or so, not just in my experience, but with who I'm coming across, is, we talk about embodying. You know, you hear about, you got to embody it, you got to embody it, you got to embody it. But I think that's taken on a new meaning and it's very singular. It's just the body. Like the body is the last aspect in alignment. It's the most physical. It's the most dense. And there's nothing left. So it's almost like what you're talking about, like get off YouTube, go just be, in the woods or whatever the case is. It's just the presence of the body, because the body's been talking. It's been talking. People I talked to, I mean, this last year and a half, really almost in line with COVID. Like when there's been more self-introspection, more alone time, quarantines and all that stuff. It's like the body is here to be heard. And I really can appreciate too what you were talking about with the light body and how this stuff is all connected, because I've noticed definite feelings and sensitivities of the light body that's within my body, however that works, that it likes or doesn't like. It's just like, no, you're not doing that no more. You feel that hurts, right? That's something you're not going to do anymore. Okay, I'm good. Yeah, I get it.
Even thoughts. I'll have a thought and it'll feel like someone's stabbing me in the back. And for a while, it was that the whole A word came up. I'm getting attacked. And it's like, no, it's my body's response to say, hey, that thought no longer serves your highest good.
Yeah.
You need to let go of it. And so that's been, for myself, the interaction is not just food and toxins and things like that, but it's actually been thoughts, like feeling my body. I'll have a thought or I'll think of someone and the body just goes, and I'm feeling it right now in the spine. And just being very mindful of those things, that process.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that too, because I have no concept of time. I can only say like a week ago, how somehow or another, I guess I was in communication with the body, just in the natural way. I spend most of my time alone, and really all my time alone unless I'm on here. And that came in. It was almost like something that said, the original thought comes from the body. And I went, what? And like the original thought comes from the body. And I said, okay, well then that explains what, these other ones are. And it wasn't even about what are these other ones, because a lot of times empaths will be like, well, whose is that? Well, it was just simply saying to me, anything that's not from the body isn't original thought. So that was like telling me, this is the only container you need to be concerned with, because if you can tune into that, which is so much more than just the thought. Obviously, it's the physical, but then it's almost like that's what's going to be replicated, almost like like begets like, or as almost like a dome, like an impenetrable dome or something, where things bounce off of you. They don't get into your head and so on. So yeah, that's interesting that you said that, because you're the only person I've heard say that.
Oh, thank you. Well, and it was a little while ago. Someone's like, you need to psychologically ground. They're like, you need to ground. I was like, oh no, I sit out on rocks. Like, I ground. They're like, no, you need to psychologically ground. And I was like, what's that? And they're like, focus on yourself, not anyone else. And that was so profound to me, because I've never heard of psychological grounding, which is very much so, what's this internal condition happening and not outside of me? Because when I focus on, especially, divination and psychic work is the focus on being out here is way different than the focus from being within here. And I recognize that if I go out here for my guidance, it's all messed up. But I have to, it's like that now the tables have turned where I have to go from within, and I call it body consciousness, recognizing that my body is consciousness. My soul was here to awaken and to anchor all the light. And then now the body, because the consciousness has always been the consciousness, it's getting the body to expand into what that consciousness and how to hold it. And that's where we have to focus a lot on the physical body's vibration, which I'm not good at. So that's coming through from my teacher and know it. Yeah.
This is good stuff. I love the way how everything flows sequentially with this show. So I'll throw this one at you. I can only speak for myself. My understanding is that we are not matching the frequency of the galactics. We're actually going beyond it. Okay, which makes sense. This makes sense to me, because if we're comprised of all these things, say that's the Akashic, you add the living library to it, we awaken to it, there's a new equation, there's a new alchemy, and it would only make sense that we would get to a higher frequency. Now, in that process, we're actually bringing unification, not just to the earth plane, but to those things that comprise us. Because anyone that's had any dealings out there, for instance, with the galactics, they all have different specialties, which means that they're going to favor and be biased towards things. Okay. Now, what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me, because if the most dense it's no different than me and you going on the street. You go on the street, you fall this far below the line, 111 degrees means you can go 111 degrees above the line. They haven't been down here. They haven't been in this density, even if they're connected to it. This is real time. So if the body, it's not, I would look at it a little bit differently, isn't that the body is being, is meeting these frequencies or raising its frequency. It's actually that what's encoded within the body in the most dense part of us that's being opened through these episodes with Avalon or Egypt or whatever it may be, the galactics, whatever it may be. And as it gets opened, then its range increases. And to me, I feel like that we're aligning, and a lot of people have said this, it's not rocket science, but like we're affecting all timelines and dimensions. But this really speaks to me. If it's centered in the body, that would make total sense, because everything's always upside down, right? We think the body is the low end of the totem pole, right? In the multidimensionality, when everything always gets flipped in this universe. It's always a paradox, right? So I don't know. It's just interesting here, because it triggers me. It inspires me. Inspires thought, and that original thought coming from two bodies talking to each other.
And that, by the way, Todd, you do know. I caught that. You're like, I don't know, and it's like, and that's a part of that too. That autopilot programming is being really conscious that our words are creating realities. We are builders. Yes. That our words, and so then it's like, that's where for myself too, it requires, especially with the acceleration, having to really slow down and be mindful of the thoughts and not getting like neurotic about it. Because I see some people are like, oh, this means this, and I mean, if that's what that for myself, I can fly into that, but it's about really that mindful too of the words that we're speaking in, because it's a lot of that Dr. Emoto work for myself is, if my body is however much percentage of water, what I'm speaking and telling to myself in the form, that's what's crystallizing the memory. And so a lot of that old Akash that needs to clear from the physical body, the old records, right, is that there's also a way that I speak and breathe and tell myself stories and tales and what I speak into existence that I really have to be mindful of now, because in the current energetics and what's anchoring, there's a lot of new that wants to show up. But and even some of it too is for us, especially, there's been a lot of dragon stuff with the Tower of Babel coming through. Has been like, a lot of us just want to speak light language. We don't even want to speak the English language anymore, because of what it can construct when we're not being mindful of our words. And so, but yeah, I just wanted to say, you do know, and more empower you, because you have a lot of soul wisdom, a lot of gifts, and a lot of abilities. And I just wanted to kind of point that one out and empower you a little bit. So.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point what you said too. I started doing something a few weeks ago. Innately, I get up out of bed, instead of grabbing the phone, which most of the time that's not an issue, but sometimes it would be. You pick it up and you see, oh, somebody sent me a message, and then you don't get off for it. But coming out of sleep state, sitting on the edge of the bed, and just start making gratitude affirmations. Thank you for my life. Thank you for letting me be Todd Medina. Thank you for my body. Thank you for my relationship. Thank you for soul. And no, it sounds hokey, but I have had one bad day, and I wouldn't even call it a bad day, but it was certainly not a balanced start in these, I don't know what it is, say 6 weeks. And that one day I grabbed the phone and got pulled in. Okay. And I had to do an Alt Control Delete. And I told this story already, but I'm not going to tell it, but I corrected it. But it took me 2-3 hours to get back to where I had been in the other days, right? So there's something about that emoto thing that you're talking about. I never thought about it, but I can see that now. I'm the producer, right? So I'm programming, and I'm not like in a robotic way, but I'm genuinely humble, gracious, and thankful. And I'm just going, hey, I thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I got to believe it's been a direct result, has set the tone for my entire day, no matter what comes. Not that I'm perfect, but I'm just saying I'm not reacting as much. I'm not triggered as easy. And I'm certainly trying to align with, projection is projection. There's no fucking excuse. If you project on me, then I project on you. It doesn't matter who started it. Okay. If you project on me, I can just simply say nothing or very little. But if I don't project, the cycle stopped, period. And that's to me that responsible co-creator that seems like, oh, what can one person do? But actually it's everything, right?
Yeah. And that's also too, it was Don Miguel Ruiz talks about it in, I think it's the 4 Agreements it's the Mastery of Love. In that book, he talks about us casting poison onto one another. I feel XYZ anger, and those trigger moments and a part of ending that poison, which he calls it black magic, is it's us just dumping our crap onto one another in the projection, right? Now it's that ownership. This is mine. I take, and even if I find myself projecting, I call it back. I go, nope, let's bring it here. Bring it here. I'm going to eat, because I call it eating our own soup. If this is my creation and I've been cooking up this creation, I'm serving it. Am I eating my own soup? And so I go, let's bring it all back and then sit there. And that's where the Gaian trajectories really help and folk, because then it's like for myself, go out, get your ass to the grass, get that root chakra plugged in and just go, let's clear this one out. And making sure we're doing that more. Yeah, take a shift. Exactly. Take a shift. Right. So
I just got a visual. I just thought that was funny. Oh my God, that was funny. Yeah. And then the other thing that happens too is there's less of a personal charge, because if you make the decision not to project, then that means that you're seeing what has come or been presented to you for what it is not. Right. And then the other thing too, I think that's important is we can pull a thought back. I had to pull an action back with 2 people that morning because they had basically accused me of something. And that's the first thing I looked at. And that's the worst thing you can do, right? Come out of sleep and look at something and go, oh my God, and I sent him a voicemail and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you? Get your shit together. And then I thought, okay, wait a minute. And I thought, okay, because I was taking a shift, I was grounding myself and I was like, okay, wait a minute. It doesn't matter what they did. It doesn't matter what they accused you of. Oneness is oneness. You're a responsible conscious creator. So what can you do? And I thought, okay, I'm going to send them both a voicemail and I'm going to tell them, look, I'm sorry. I just woke up. I didn't mean to come on so strong and not address the issue, only the issue that I created. I left the issue of what they said to themselves and I walked away. So I don't know, these things that seem to be happening for what I'm observing and within myself, and I don't know if you can speak to this, they're very human. They're just conscious human integrity, right? Like no bullshit, because integrity is something that you don't have to get people to agree with you. You don't have to get people, you're in integrity. You don't have to do that. You just do it, right? And whether 10 people are watching or nobody's watching, and that takes care of it, and you move on, right? So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Is it very human things? Is it coming down to very human things now that all the teams have left us?
Yeah, and also too, it's all right, guys. We're speaking unity consciousness. We're carrying the belief of you. Can you guys freaking unify? Can you get out of the poopy diaper and get along? And that's been the thing for me has been I'm wearing a poopy diaper right now. I need to go clean that one up. And see, that to me brings in the folly of this, because at the end of the day, when I love the Celtic approach to this programming is there's this wee little, it's just we're funny little humans doing our thing, and that's what helps me out, because it takes a lot of that heavy punishment out over like, oh my gosh, you're doing. But yes, everything's very human right now, and it's like, wake up, kids, smell the coffee. You're here to unify. You're here to build new earth. Can you get along? You guys are the councils.
Yeah.
You are the teams of light. You are the galactics.
Yeah.
You're the light ship. You're the angelic. You're the dragon. You're the elemental. You're the master. Figure it out. And a lot of that is because it's like, and if you can't figure it out, go within. Bring forward that piece of you that knows, right?
Yeah.
Bring forward that council of light from within, and have that discussion, and to recognize that all of us serve on the councils and we're having these discussions. And that's why I feel like a lot is retracted. Now, the ones that have been coming through for myself, especially with things like the GFL, the Galactic Federation, they've come through quite a few times, but it's more about, they will come through to be a bridge point of bringing new councils together and new leadership roles so we can start to get along and, you know, working with those timelines. But it's not like a lot of information in the galactics are doing anything for us. It's like, no, you are that hybrid being in a body. Go get along with people, show up. But now as a result, yeah, there's more human stuff coming up, but I think it's because it really is that time for us to clear out all of that societal especially with the star families. Like, I see some people and I just bawl because I'm like, I want to meet you in person. We've been separated for so long, and then adding in what's been going on, that for myself, it's time to unite with the family. And as a result, yeah, all the human stuff is getting in the way, but it's because we're supposed to build new earth. If we can't get along and not project or not fight or not get jealous or start making comparisons, how are we supposed to build new earth? Right.
It's what and I'm a big believer there's no standard of success. Like, it's a game, but everything we do has purpose. We can't really be hurt, but there's a game, and there's the dark and light, dance, right? But it goes to like that whole polarity thing. Like, who would think, that old phrase, who am I that God would know my name? Right. Like, it's like that. It's like, okay, so who's to think that one of us can bring into alignment the Anunnaki Pleiadian rift or whatever it is? Well, it would only make sense. We're the ones that have everything in us. This is the universally seeded planet. And so it's how you and I get along right now. And it's how we interact moment by moment in our lives. It's actually, we've reached the point where we were getting this information, right? You can call it code was awakening in us. And now we're giving the code. See, now we're giving the code because we've been the boots on the ground. And I guess my question or my comment that I had made a minute ago to you was, it's so weird because there's all that woo-woo out there and all the experiences we've had, to think that it's going to come back to the seemingly mundane human experience and the human interactions only makes sense. Like, that's the last place the dog would look, and it's its own tail it's been chasing, right? So yeah, and then the humor thing you bring up too. I think, man, I try to laugh. Particularly at myself, but all day long. Just there's nothing better. It's like the thoughtless form of download. It's just this, I don't know. And when you mention the elementals, like they carry that energy, and it's just, and you look like one actually.
Thank you. Yeah. I got a lot of elementals.
Ready for you to have a green hat pop on. All right, man. I love talking to you, man. It's very cool. And we'll have to do it again sometime next year. And just keep doing what you're doing. And man, thank you for sharing yourself and being so open and natural and human, and just being real, man. That's what it's all about, being transparent.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate the time. I appreciate everything you're doing here, and thank you everyone that came out. And dude, keep doing it. You're doing it.
Will do, man.
All right.
Will do. Take care, brother.